let's summarize each of William Wordsworth's selected poems. We Are Seven is a conversation between an innocent child and an adult in which the child insists she is one of 7 children, though some have moved away or even died, depicting her strangely wise perspective on death. In Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, the poet has returned to view the church abbey at Tintern. He'd formerly enjoyed the beauty of the place and hopes to retain his memories of it until the end of his days. Michael tells the long tale of a rural family living simply in the countryside. Michael and Isabel work hard to lovingly raise their son Luke, but send him away to work in the city. Both parents wait for their son to return, and they both die at their cottage without ever seeing him again. Strange Fits of Passion Have I Known describes a startling vision of death that the speaker has for a girl he loves, identified only as Lucy. Ode to Duty expresses tension between the need to follow duty and a freer sense of instinct. The poet calls for a following of the laws of God and behaving according to stricter principles. Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, September 3, 1802, is a poem about the view of urban London from Westminster Bridge, a sight calling to the poet's mind the calm of nature when nothing is disturbed or in motion. The world is too much with us expresses the poet's sense of alienation from the life of his own times, rejecting the modern economic system with its emphasis on consumption and purchase, which has wasted and squandered the better qualities of people. In It Is a Beauteous Evening, Calm and Free, the poet describes the narrator walking on the beach with a beloved child. Together they share in a sense of divine beauty and majesty of sea, sky, and sun, though the adult is more keenly aware of this divinity. London, 1802, addresses the great English poet John Milton, author of Paradise Lost, lamenting the state of modern English life as desperately needing purification, with Milton's help. In The Solitary Reaper, the hiking poet hears the indecipherable, beautiful, memorable song of a Scottish woman singing as she works with her sickle. My Heart Leaps Up, also called The Rainbow, is about seeing a rainbow and having an emotional reaction to it as a reminder of the tie of God to man, and having deep feelings of wonder and awe like a child might at nature and creation. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud regards the pleasure and joy from remembering a vision the poet had of many daffodils seeming to dance in the wind during his walks in the countryside. Ode, Intimations of Immortality, expresses Wordsworth's philosophy on the growth of children into adults and the loss of pure connections to nature and the divine. Surprised by joy, Impatient as the Wind shows the great pain of remembering the death of a beloved one years later could be matched only by the original pain. Momentary joy vanishes, only memory remains. Finally, the Prelude is a long, 13-part autobiographical epic poem about Wordsworth's journey of life and learning he undertook as a poet growing from childhood to adulthood. William Wordsworth was a poet, but that doesn't mean a number of his most iconic poems didn't have any characters. First, there was Michael, the protagonist of a titular poem and the portrait of a simple, devoted family member who cannot adapt to progress that involves dishonesty. When his nephew defaults on an obligation, he's forced to send his only son Luke to work in the city. He and his wife Isabel wait for years for their beloved son's return, but the son falls under bad influences, and tragically, Michael and Isabel die without ever seeing him again. A stone Michael has set as a marker for a shelter he planned to build with Luke remains as a tribute to his stoic faith. The Solitary Reaper is a poem about a Scottish girl singing to herself as she harvests grain. Although the listener cannot understand her song, he finds her voice thrilling and plaintive as she bends over her sickle. He remembers the mysterious encounter long afterward. The unnamed girl in It Is a Beauteous Evening, Calm and Free, is close to God and nature, even though she lacks an adult's ability to realize this. She was likely modeled after one of Wordsworth's own children, who would walk along the beach with her father. The little girl in We Are Seven is a young, naive girl who insists, through a conversation with an adult, her family has 7 siblings, although 2 of the children are dead. Her response is anything but tragic. She seems well-adjusted and presents a really deep, wise take on life, death, and familial bonds. Isabel is the younger wife of the titular character in the poem Michael. She lights a lantern at the chimney that becomes locally symbolic of her family's hard work, earning her home the nickname the Evening Star. Lucy, the girl in Strange Fits of Passion Have I Known, is someone about whom the poet's speaker has a mysterious vision. The poet seems to both love her passionately while also freaking out at the realization that she will, like all human beings, someday be dead. In Michael, Luke is the only son of a rural family who goes to the city to find work and is morally corrupted by bad influences. Shamed and corrupted by the elements of evil, he runs away and hides, never to see his beloved family again. Light, the rainbow, and the solitary figure are the key symbols recurring in the poetry of William Wordsworth. In the pastoral ballad Michael, the poet uses objects relating to light to symbolize the determination and faithful nature of the couple as they cling to their land. Isabel, Michael's wife, hangs an old rustic lamp from the chimney to provide light in the cottage, which becomes known all over the region as the Evening Star. Just as that star in the sky provides direction and possibly hope to viewers, the simple structure of their cottage is there as a beacon. All know and revere it, as it never falters. The light of the Evening Star is extinguished, becoming a symbol of change and loss for the good country people. The rainbow is a central symbol of the power of faith to call forth an emotional reaction. The sign to the biblical Noah of the divine covenant promising the return of life is also symbolic to the poet as both a child and man. The young boy who is father of the man and the adult looking ahead to his old age see the rainbow as a symbol of continuity and faith. It is a sign given by nature to all men who raise their eyes to see what is there to inform them. The rainbow's arc symbolizes the binding of all life's days in a natural piety, as each part of life holds its place to encompass the arc of heaven, including those days still to come. Those days are hidden from sight, as the rainbow can only be seen in its half shape across the horizon, for human eyes can never see all of the divine at once. Arguably, most importantly, the rainbow is beautiful, and poetry, as is life, is often geared toward just that, or lamenting beauty's absence. For Wordsworth, a life without being able to enjoy the splendor of a rainbow is a life not worth having. The solitary figure is a symbol Wordsworth often uses as he describes his own solitary adventures, like he does in I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Loneliness is often transformed by nature's gifts to him of the field of dancing daffodils, which evoke an inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. Solitary figures also appear frequently in his poems like A Solitary Reaper. Wordsworth describes the importance of solitude for his emotional and intellectual development from childhood in the Prelude, Book 2. Solitude is a means of experiencing nature without distraction and for processing his poetic visions. Wordsworth often wrote of solitary individuals as part of his rejection of a traditional, monetary-based society and the supposed wisdom of accepting ideas. Solitary figures seem more focused and pure in their isolation, closer to the childish and natural states he idealized. Wordsworth is famously associated with the image of the poet as the lone observer of nature and the pensive, textual documentarian of nature's division from humanity. Beneficent nature, the magic of childhood, and the power of politics are the critical themes that mark the intersections of humble humanity and a kind of cosmic mysticism that underscore William Wordsworth's poetry. Wordsworth expressed deep connections with nature, a word he personified by capitalizing it. A perpetual observer of nature, to Wordsworth, it wasn't picturesque in precise terms per se, but a great entity that helped shape and form people's lives. Nature's influences begin in early childhood, when there are the fewest obstacles to receiving impressions. Indeed, Wordsworth's most lasting, memorable lines are essentially statements on the power of immediate impression and reaction to nature throughout one's life and alienation from the natural world of God. The magic of childhood is one of Wordsworth's central themes that romanticizes the time in life when the young self is closest to God and the external world. In many of Wordsworth's poems, a child's unspoiled powers are eroded by the demands of an adult life in society with others. The powers fade and may lead to unhappiness. While many involve fear and disillusionment, ultimately youth is glorified as the state the old can relive in memory to create poetry such as his. Among the sweetest children to Wordsworth are the blind, the vagrant, and the orphaned, the survivors of trauma, those who sing and tend to the graves of departed siblings, those who face up to dangers and are informed by them. The power of politics is a theme central to Wordsworth, though he wasn't really directly involved with the general affairs of his time. He didn't enter politics or government when he was young and most idealistic, and often praised a life of solitude or the bliss of introspection and tranquility. But he was also deeply concerned with conditions of life, including politics. Wordsworth went to France just at the time of the Revolution. The new sentiments of liberation and human rights being struggled over were of tremendous interest to him, deepened by the personal relationship he established with the mother of his daughter, Caroline. But soon, his high ideals and excitement about the events were greatly diminished. He strongly disapproved of the violence that erupted, the executions and bloodshed and cruelties. Wordsworth had deep feelings for rural England as well, and feared the effects of the Industrial Revolution that was already changing the face of his land. But as he grew older, his radical self faded. Moving closer to the political establishment and the accepted religion, he received, at age 43, a position in the government in charge of the official revenue stamps that had to be affixed to various documents, which brought him and his family economic security. He became involved in real estate speculation as well, and for the last decades of his life was a conservative ally of the state. His poetry was viewed as less relevant by changing tastes of the time, even when he was appointed the Poet Laureate of England in 1843.